everyone here has probably heard about the €9 ticket. We're about to get a little recap. If you do not speak German, please go and get yourself a headset so that you can understand this next talk. It will be in German. If you're joining us in the live stream, welcome. We're happy to have you. This will be translated for you into English. Please give a warm welcome to the Vorstandsvorsitzende der Berliner Verkehrsbetriebe, Eva Kreienkamp.
Welcome, Eva Kreienkamp, who is the chairwoman of the Berlin Public Transport Company.
So, thank you very much for having me here today. Thank you very much for this kind introduction. And you really pronounced my name well, so that shows your talent. The €9 ticket, some of you have heard about it. Some of you have even used it. And I'm going to have this talk in German because the rest might be, more complicated. But für alle die davon noch nicht.
So everyone who has never heard about this €9 ticket, I would just briefly put you into the context. So how it happened. In the course of an overnight meeting of the coalition committee in March this year, we all of a sudden heard that there should be a ticket which should cost €9 per month. And we admit that this confused a whole industry shortly. But this is no tragedy. The industry can adjust to what a government wants them to do. And so, indeed, the whole industry has adjusted to this new policy, and in very short time we managed to get a ticket worth €9. It was valid for 3 months, so each month you had to pay €9 for the ticket, and it gave you the opportunity to use all means of public transport apart from the long-distance transport. That's a sensation in itself, and indeed many people used this ticket and accepted the offer. With the Berlin company alone, we sold more than 3.3 million of those tickets, 1.1 per month. At the same time, we had 850 or 900,000 subscribers who also were allowed to enjoy this low price. So you can imagine that more or less 2 million Berliners used the €9 ticket, even some more, and that's definitely more than half of all the inhabitants of Berlin. And that can be transferred as well to the to other German länder. We heard that they sold 92 million tickets, and if you divide this, and if you add the job tickets on that, we can say that half of the nation was included in that program. So this alone is very important for an industry of which normally gets 9% of the modal split. Some would wish to have 10%, some say it's each. So it's relatively a low share, and all of a sudden they all woke up because so many people started to use that new ticket. It was supposed to be a financial relief. That was true. And of course, there was some hope towards a change of mobility, and I will later speak about that, whether this hope really came true. Now, let me say what actually did our users of the public transport say. The surprise was big. 91% of them enjoyed this ticket and they liked the idea. So why is that? Of course, and on the next slide you see that they enjoyed the idea because it's easy to use at low cost and because it was valid in the whole country. Those were the main criteria. And of course, we have to say that was the signal which we got how to set up our industry in the future, how we should do so. and depending from which angle of view you look at it. Low costs, that is something where we have to take a closer look to, at least from our point of view, and certainly also from the point of view of our economy, national economy, and even from the point of view of the users. 9 euro is definitely too low as the cost. So unification is something which we have to create. We created a system in order to compensate the costs and to use the income structures also jointly, also to use these incomes and to coordinate the timetables between different transportation associations so that it can be organized at all for our customers, but also it should be clear for everybody, and especially for those who use public transport only from time to time. They might say, I do not even know whether I bought the right ticket. And so that is something where we have to improve. So in the future we have to see how things can be simplified. This validity for the whole country was, of course, especially interesting in the summer period. Everybody was pleased about that, and they really started trips for going for swimming, or they made tours to palaces and castles, or visited their families at a very low price, and they were able to do so because it was really the same whether you started in any state or they were all absolutely happy. Passengers enjoyed this system very much, and you could also see that mainly, let's say, it was a privately induced transportation, mainly during leisure time, and also they included travels for shopping tours or for making other trips just from time to time, just a hop-on, hop-off tour through the cities, etc., because it just was possible. And that is, of course, something which where people noticed that the system works, and they gave it a try, and they found out it did work. And now later we are going to look into the situation where the system failed. Now we really could see those people who gave it a try, who just sniffed into the system, they use it more frequently. Those who were already inside the system, I'm referring to our subscribers, they know what they do, and they practically use the system as before, because when they subscribe for the ticket, they decided already before where to go, when to go. Generally, those were also people who regularly use public transport for going to work or for going to other places, and that is why they had opted for a subscription. And they, of course, did not produce more traffic. That has to be said as well. We know more or less already, and they know already more or less what ways they have to go. So in general, we can say that the demand was definitely higher during the day and also distributed across the day. That was the case in Berlin, but it's not the same everywhere. Berlin is a city-state where altogether people are rather dwelling, and in fact we have a very good and well-branched system of public transport, and people accepted this widely. In other cases this was not everywhere the case, especially the regional trains, which mainly take people to some leisure time activities, etc. They also had to deal with some overload in some places, but as regards the Berlin Transport Company, things were pretty good. Another indicator is also important for us. As a transportation company in the recent years, due to the pandemic, we did really have a real dent in our balance sheet. At the beginning, when everybody was closed down, we ended up at 50% of the ordinary numbers of passengers, and then over time passengers came back slowly but surely and ended up between 70 and 80% of the earlier years. In Berlin the situation slightly improved, and the €9 ticket actually brought us back to the earlier level before the pandemic. That again was good for us. That is the thresholds where people were hesitating to use public transport because they were not sure whether it would be safe. That feeling was gone. Like at the Oktoberfest, they were really filling the public transport means. They also took their bicycles, they took their surfboards and went to the zoo or whatever, and all at the same time. And this is important for us because people know again that the public transport system is a good means to get through the city and to travel. There was a slight downturn of the use of private cars in Berlin in some places, but mainly one can say that the private cars were still in use while public transport increased. What can we learn from this? People were just moving more through the city. They really enjoyed a nice summer this year. And this is also another indicator for the fact that we could see that we've got different tariff areas. In the center we call it A, and outside this circle there is the tariff region A, and C is the region around Berlin, where Berlin and Brandenburg are joining each other, and in some places people do not really know that we are actually a metropolitan region, but the C region is indeed the indicator for this metropolitan region. And what we could see there is that this exchange was used much more than in other places, in other times, because there is also a slight difference between the two tariff systems, and that was gone all of a sudden due to this €9 ticket. So everybody used this opportunity to move across, and so the people who had moved out of Berlin into the outskirts could now be visited by the Berliners, and vice versa. Of course, those who live in Brandenburg region, they used the opportunity to go into Berlin, and this exchange worked absolutely well. Now, so of course we had some learnings as well. As I said, it has to be simple. That's very important. That's something which we really can take home from this experiment, because it was just unbeatable. It was kind of a Bahncard light. That was a big pleasure for everyone. So they did not really have to think of whether the ticket they bought was indeed the best price in the right tariff zone, etc. That was really relieving people from the burden. And for us it was important that now everybody was speaking about public transport, and that is also why our passengers tell us what they experienced while using this system. They also told us our weaknesses. Such good market research could never else have been made or this way, and we are still in this discussion mood where we see that people are really demanding a follow-up ticket. They now are discussing what's actually worth what's happening there. Do we really want to pay a little bit more in some places for using these ticketing systems altogether? Those are very hard discussions which are now being held, but for the industry it was the most the best feedback which we ever received. Of course, the price must be the right one. That was absolutely obvious to everybody. But people also tell us that they would be prepared to pay a little bit more than €9, and we are now trying to find out how much they would be prepared to pay on top of the €9. But there is a big but as well. In areas where there is no tram, there is no bus, there is no subway, etc., then of course there are people who, just for solidarity reasons, because they like the idea, they also bought the €9 ticket. But then they of course were waiting for the bus, and the bus did not arrive because there was no bus line installed. There are some district areas where they only have school buses, and that's it. There are some places which, because They have emptied a little bit in the meantime, so there is no one taking care that they get connection to public transport. And for them, it absolutely doesn't matter whether the ticket is worth €9 or €100. They just can't use it. And that is something where we also have to take a close look at. When we look how transportation is created, it's not actually created where it is already, where it's visible, but it's created in other places, namely in many different points. And those points have to be analyzed and organized in a different way so that we do not promote individual transportation endlessly. And that was also one of the major learnings. So, in summary, the price has to be correct, has to be the right one, and it has to be simple to use in order to have a good systems. And at best, it should be a digitalized system, so that it's a one-click shopping experience. We know this from Amazon, and why shouldn't this be possible also for the public transport system? The second thing is that we have to develop the system further, especially in places where we see that traffic can be created there and we can use our data. Maybe we are not using them well enough. We are always running behind. Now we are considering part is, of course, covered by railway lines, but this costs time and money, and in the meantime we also have to think of it as an industry, how digitization can be made smarter, so that intermodality can really be developed, where intermodal traffic can be put together with car sharing and public transport, so that nice travel chains can be developed, which are on the one hand simple, on the other hand do not last or do not take a long time to travel. And micromobility and on-demand mobility should also be included in that consideration, but not in places where we already have an excellent offer and where we just are stumbling across different modes of transport or vehicles which we then have to rescue from the river, etc. But actually in places where new places have developed, but where public transport has never been considered, and certainly we will experience some stages of development, and we have to skip certain stages of development, as was done in Africa in case of the telephone system. They started developing the telephone without bothering about drawing cables. They already started right away by radio communication. And then, of course, this rethinking should be necessary for the entire public transport, which is much more creative and much more promoting interactive living than we can all imagine at this moment altogether. So that brings me to the end of my talk, but not totally. It's not written anywhere, but in a certain way, this is also my personal remark at the end. Today is the 23rd of September. That's the climate strike day again. And when we really think why we actually are having public transport, we know that we still are the countries which, although they reduce the CO2 emissions, but we also are part of the solution, because the more people use our system, the more CO2 can be saved. And I think that is also something which needs to be the impetus of our activity. We have to make clear that only networked, smart and public and shared transportation will be the way towards the future. Thank you very much.
Vielen Dank, Frau Kreienkamp. Den Klicker nehme ich.
Ja.
Vielen Dank, das war sehr interessant, Ihre Learnings aus dem 9-Euro-Ticket.
Thank you very much for telling us what the learnings are from the 9-Euro ticket.
Gleich weiter.
We're going to continue in a minute. At 11:30, we're going to talk about data from the public transportation system with Martin Schmitz from the VDV, the German transport company, and we will start in 10 minutes.